Okay, we're going live.
Yay! And welcome everyone to the Mystics Mavens show. I am Claudia Rocafort, and I am one of the Mystic Mavens. I am a spiritual facilitator. I am a business coach and a certified life coach. And I am here with my sisters, Kathy Basil, Joanna White, and Carol Pilkington. They're all Pilkington. Forgive me. I always seem to stumble a little bit through your last name, and it's such a beautiful last name. So I want to correct myself and say it properly. Pilkington. And Kathy and everybody's going to introduce themselves. So Kathy, take it away.
All right, I'm Kathy Basil, and I'm a transformational life coach and energy healer in Denver, Colorado. I'm really personally interested in today's topic that Carol's going to be leading us through. She wrote this one just for me, I think. So I'm going to pass it on to you, Miss Joanna.
Hello, I'm going to say happy birthday to me. Everybody's saying the crown floor, and it's just happy birthday. And I'm excited to be here on my birthday with Carol, sharing this very special message about completing cycles. So as I complete a cycle this year of going around and being here. So Carol, take it away.
Yes. We can't hear you.
Miss Carol.
That was a perfect segue, and happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Because as Joanna was saying, it is the end of her last year cycle. Her birthday cycle is February 6th, actually, from February 6th, 2022 to February 6th, 2023. That's a whole birthday cycle for her. So just to give you an idea of what a cycle is. So I'm Carol Pilkington. I'm a spiritual teacher and counselor, and I work with individuals that are going through high anxiety, stress, depression, and a general state of sorrow. And completing cycles of action is one of the things that totally changed my life. And it totally coincides with depression, anxiety, stress, sorrow, grief, because when we don't allow ourselves to complete cycles, everything is cumulative and we feel pressure, we feel the weight of all of life on us, and that is because we are not completing cycles. So a cycle has a beginning, middle, and end. Just like I was describing with Joanna's birthday and her 1 year, her cycle. Now we all have bigger cycles. There's the birth, we live our life, and then the death. That's the life cycle. And of course, all the time in between is a myriad of cycles within cycles within cycles. So when I began to apply this concept and this skill of seeing things through cycles as a series of cycles, it literally changed my life, because it's not just about a beginning and an end. It's about all that happens in between. So think of it, and this was an analogy that a friend of mine and my teacher brought back to me the other day. I don't know if some of you out there are familiar with knitting, but when you are knitting something, there are a ton of loose threads at the back of the item that you're knitting. And when you have a finished item, those loose threads are all intertwined with the rest of the item. So you don't see what was there before. So all of those loose threads are dangling, and they need to be tied in. They need to be integrated with the whole rest of the garment or whatever is being knitted. Does that make sense?
That's a great metaphor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Integrated.
And you're saying a cycle of action can be anything. It can be conversations, it can be tasks, it can be help us to understand
Yes.
everything that it
Yes,
can be.
exactly. So there can be short cycles and long cycles, and the conversations that we have with people, if we're not intentional in our listening and receiving, we sometimes can walk away disturbed or perplexed or in some other emotional state where the conversation is still lingering and we ruminate about it in the mind. And over time, when we don't get those questions or loose ends resolved within us, they accumulate and they wind up being all of those thoughts in the mind that take up space and energy and create angst. And so it's really important for us to be able to have feel as complete as possible at the end of a conversation as we can. And the only way sometimes to resolve any kind of inner conflict is within ourselves. Sometimes we just can't resolve it with another. And it's really not another's responsibility. I know it's really hard to hear, but it's not another's responsibility to resolve the conflict for us. And so that's a type of, that's an impact of what an incomplete cycle of action could look like. So anything that's unresolved in a conversation creates an open cycle that's not complete. But we have the ability to complete it for ourselves. Yes, Joanna.
So okay, wait, I don't know how to word this.
That's okay. That's all right.
So like you're saying, so we hear, I need closure.
Mm-hmm.
I need closure. That's the statement I'm trying to ask the question around.
Yeah.
What does closure look like? Like how do you know when you've wrapped up the conversation or the dialogue?
Right.
It's that feeling of unfinished, that something's unfinished. And to me, that unfinished means that creates that angst, that it's something that is still pending, something that I have to address at some point, and I don't know when, or I don't know how necessarily.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
But what if you're in a conversation with somebody and you know that you both have expressed your point of view and neither one's going to change their point of view. How do you bring beautiful just acceptance to allowing one another to be where they are? How would you?
You just said it right
That's
there.
it.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah.
It can agree to disagree.
It's not about, oftentimes we try and convince or try and change another person's way of thinking to align with our own. But when we just allow another to be and accept that each one of us is seeing in life through our own reality tunnel and accept that as it is. One of the first sessions that we ever did on this show was the isness of things, remember?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is part of that. It's really about accepting the isness of something, for accepting another as they are. If I know that I have expressed myself as fully as I can in any given moment and have been clear as best as I could be, and yet it's still not being received, I have to accept that. I have to accept that I have done the best I could in that moment with what and who is before me, and accept that they can't receive it. And not trying
to make choices accordingly, right?
Yeah, and not trying to convince them or explain it in another way that they're still might not be able to receive. And that's okay. I'm always in a position where I see what's not being able to be received. I also have to pay attention when I'm even starting a conversation to know whether or not a person has the opening, the listening for what I have to express. I don't have to be a motor mouth. I don't have to be a know-it-all to project onto another person what I think and feel all the time.
Right.
I have to always be mindful of that as well, because it creates chaos within the field, within the relationship. If
Yeah.
I'm just spouting my own truths, opinions, and all this other stuff, right?
Well, with the need to be heard, it just reminds me of a much younger
Yeah.
version of myself when I was wounded and dating. And I always wanted, I was thinking that
Oops.
We lost her.
You froze for a
it
little
was
bit.
closure, but it was really my ego.
You froze
You froze.
froze.
Could you repeat that,
Oh.
Kathy?
when you were
so
younger.
yeah, it just reminds me of a much younger version of me when I was dating and wounded, and I would want closure is what I thought it was, but it was really my ego needing to have the last word and the need to be seen. But like you're saying, sometimes you have to recognize that person just isn't going to ever be in a place to receive or see you in the light in which you're and then you just make the decisions accordingly. But boy, that seems like 3 lifetimes ago, thankfully.
I wish mine was lifetimes ago. I had this conversation this week. And I have to share this for a moment because, boy, it was so challenging. Co-parenting sometimes is really, really challenging. And having to look at different points of view of how that is effective and what is our involvement or role as a parent, for example. And I find myself still to this day struggling so much with the part that needs to be heard. And I'm looking at what you're saying, Carol. It's really just dawning through me, and I'm kind of processing it because it's so powerful, this acceptance that they may not be ready to receive it. To me, it's a question of respect. It's a question of, in a conversation, it can't be a monologue. There's got to be this, let me hear your view. I'll consider it. I'll give you my view. Please consider it. And then we can agree to disagree or find a way how we're going to handle this. To me, that's my conscious communicator desperately wanting for everybody to kind of play in that role, play in that space, right? And this is huge for me to really, I even wrote it down for myself. It's like with a big exclamation point. What is it that it's so challenging? We don't get closure because these things stay with you. Like Carol said, you ruminate them because there's a disconnect. There's a part that was not heard, or a part that was not finished, or that did not align, or that did not connect, or did not achieve or reach its ideal endpoint. And go ahead, Jeff.
Look, what do you do with that?
Right. I mean, I can agree to disagree when we get to an impasse in the conversation. I can understand that. I think the challenging part for me now is looking at what happens when you do not feel heard, or you do not feel that you were able to connect in a mature kind of mutually respectful way, so that at least there is that point of connection, or at least acceptance of each other. And this was incredibly helpful, Carol, to accept that sometimes people are not ready to receive it, or not really ready to play on from the same perspective or in the same field. What can you suggest that we do with those feelings of unfinished, though?
Well, what I used to do is I used to look at my investment in the outcome. What is my investment? What am I invested in with regards to getting my point across? Do I want the person to agree with me? Because in this reality, we often want agreement in how we feel, how we see things. And if we don't, we can tend to feel like an outcast. We can tend to feel like we're alone. We can tend to feel like we don't belong. And it can be uncomfortable in some situations. Well, have you ever been asked the question, well, don't you agree? You hear somebody spouting their opinions, and then they ask, well, don't you agree? Well, no, I really don't. That's okay. I don't have to agree with you. If you
Right.
want, if that's your perspective, then fine, have that perspective. But you don't need my agreement to have it and to take responsibility for it. See,
Mhm.
that's the key for me. What am I invested in with regards to needing to get my point across, needing to say something versus just keeping my mouth shut?
Yeah.
Sometimes I just know that I have to keep my mouth shut
I still kind of
and
learn
allow
that.
other to be other. And so when we can walk away from a conversation and feel like we are energized and we feel good, no matter what the circumstances, then we know that we're complete and we can put a period at the end of it. I had a client several weeks ago tell me this very thing. She is always worried about, this person's always worried about what people think of her, how she looks, and da 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 da. And this one time, after we had this conversation, this very conversation about completing cycles of action, she walked away from the conversation and she recognized that she didn't have all those thoughts going in. And so when she left the conversation, she felt complete. She didn't have to think about it anymore. There was a period at the end of it, and she felt good. She felt joyful. And she was able to do other things. Her mind and her heart were open to do other things. And that's really what completing cycles of action is all about. Being able to walk away and be in life in a joyful state and feel open and feel and be love.
I love how you included the heart in that, because I think, just like you're saying, over time, all those unaccumulated open ends, just we're so busy that it creates this barrier that you can't even be present with yourself, let alone truly feel life. So what a beautiful, this is a profound conversation. Thanks for opening it.
Yeah. It when we complete cycles of action, it enables us to be present to every single solitary moment.
Mm.
And that's what I'm getting from this, is just being present with how we feel. And that's what's given us the completion, the feeling of completion, is knowing that my intentions for this was set and I did what I intended to do, is what gives me the completion.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
It's really powerful. And I think that a lot of this applies to just about everything in our lives. And particularly in these conversations, what you brought is so powerful, Carol. What is the outcome we're expecting? What is the outcome we're looking for in that conversation? If it's an expression of ideas, it's very easy to accept our differences. If we're trying to enroll someone to support us in a task or in a way of, and the higher the stakes, I mean, for example, raising children, the higher the emotions that are going to possibly be triggered in the disconnect or in the process of not being able to mutually agree on things. And that's where this acceptance, I'm still kind of processing that and thinking, how do I complete the cycle for myself if the conversation did not feel complete? And then I'm just thinking, okay, maybe I need to just work on me in that moment and be able to say, okay, I send you light, I send you wisdom, I send you love, and I get to accept that this is all that we can get to right now.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it has to be honest. It can't be a hope or a wish. It has to be it has to be in totality.
Yeah.
But I think in there, that beautiful gift of complete acceptance, like it's within ourselves. Where is that neediness? Do I have that need to be heard? And if we can get to that space of, I want this, but I don't need this, or I can honor that we are on a path of, gosh, I can't imagine, honestly, Claudia, with the stakes, like you said, the highest possible stakes to
Yeah.
the well-being of your children, and to be raised in a way that you desire. But that neediness, if it just, again, we're triggering out, reminding me of those old patterns when I was dating, and anytime I needed the man to show up in a certain way because of, based on my own insecurity of distrust because of my background, it's like every time it would block the possibility of him showing up the way I wanted to. It's like we're creating our thing. So it's such a great, when we have those incomplete moments of looking back, what is it that I'm requiring? Is there a part of me that's needing validation that I should be giving myself first? And especially if there's certain patterns that are in all these incomplete dialogues or interactions, that if there's a pattern, we certainly know where it's stemming from. Like, ruh-roh, me again.
So true. It's very well put, Kathy. It's true. That's why this whole concept of completing cycles of action is so powerful, because it is about taking a deep dive look into our belief systems about ourselves. And when we can complete those cycles and all the manifestations of how they present themselves in our life and our world with other, it's one of the things that I put in a Facebook post was, it's not just about the beginnings and endings, it's all the stuff in between, right? And when we can close that gap more and more between the beginnings and the endings, we can collapse it, and it becomes, like a coin, where you do have both sides of the coin. You can't have one without the other. But all the stuff in between is not there. And so in every single moment, there's life, death, life, death, life, death. Every moment is a cycle of action. Every single moment.
So every time we talk to our ex is life and death.
And rebirth. Please.
I got it. But I do understand what Claudia is saying, like the higher the stakes, you feel like, why can't we come to this meeting of the minds? But allowing yourself to understand, that's what it was for me. That's why I'm not here anymore. That's why we're not together anymore, because it was a place where we weren't completing cycles of action together.
Well, and it's interesting because in a relationship like that, just you want at least somebody to be willing to try to understand your point of view, even if you don't need to come to, being on the same side. It's like the willingness or lack of is really telling.
Oh, that's huge, Kathy. I want to take a moment. So sorry, Joanna, to really talk about the brilliance of what just Kathy said. In any relationship, right? Just the willingness. That is the space of love. That's the space of, I am willing to at least try to understand where you're coming from and try to understand why this is important to you. That in itself will change any relationship.
And it sounds amazing, but they have to be at the frequency of willingness.
Yes, exactly.
And then you get to choose, or you have them or not.
Because we think that they have that capacity. And the thing is, our capacity has grown. But when somebody else's hasn't, it's not that they're not willing, they just haven't grown past it to even know that they're not willing. They don't even know they're not willing.
That's right.
That's what it is. And that's where the love comes in, because now we really got to look at them and say, wow, I love you because you need help. You can't even, you're not seeing past, like, you know, for those people that aren't willing to go past that place is where that unconditional love come in. Because it's like, I have to look at you as really somebody that's stunted in growth.
Or even just without that possible judgment, right?
Mhm.
You know, that they need help or that they've stunted. They're not there yet. It's as simple as they're not there
But
yet.
that's what I'm saying is understanding that.
That's acceptance. That's the level of acceptance that
Right.
Carol, I
That's
think,
it.
is talking
Right.
about. And
That's
that's
what
the
I'm
part
Carol's
that
saying.
building
it's
up to
not
one of her
about
mic
them.
drops. I feel it. Sorry.
Not about them. It's about my acceptance of it.
That's exactly right.
Seeing what anybody around me is capable of at any given moment, and my being able to accept it or not.
Right.
Yeah, it's all about taking responsibility for where we are, what our tolerance levels are in any given situation. And it's not about tolerance as I can't tolerate you anymore. I can't be with you anymore because you ... It's just, this is where I'm at. I'm taking responsibility for where I'm at, and I need to own it and do whatever I need to take care of myself so that I continue to grow and evolve. And where we are at in this relationship, I cannot do that in this space. So it's all about where you are and has nothing to do with where anybody else is.
Ownership.
That's right.
And looking at where they are, being able to have that vision also. I think, Joanna, you said something that's really powerful that I'd also like to re-mention, and it's that unconditional love,
Mhm.
right? We can have that unconditional love and just accept that somebody may not be exactly where we are and continue to love them. And it doesn't make us better or worse or anything like that. It's just we're in different places. Different
Yeah.
vibrations, different perspectives. And can we continue to honor ourselves and own what Carol was saying, own our growth while we're sharing with that other person or not? Or is it necessary in order for us to honor ourselves and to continue to grow, to separate from that place or energy or perspective or vision that they're carrying?
Yeah. You know, people out there might be thinking that we've kind of strayed off the subject a bit, but we really have not, because this is part of the process of completing cycles of action. Landing, we have to land and arrive at a completion point for ourselves.
This is so deep and so powerful, ladies, and
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for all that you've shared and all that you've shown me in just, this nearly half an hour. Because when I was thinking of cycles of action, my business brain was on, and I'm thinking of my to-do list, and I'm thinking of my time management skills, and I'm thinking about how do I, and how to bring these kind of examples into the conversation to support what Carol is saying and what she's sharing with us. And this is where it took us. So there's all of that too, and we can address those things.
Yes.
But
it's all of that. And it's like a light of consciousness you can just shine in every direction in your life. A few years ago, I was in business. I found myself in these collaborations where I was waiting on everybody else and I was stagnated and I was in this blame like all around me. And so I'm like, what is this? So I went on a blame game and just gathered up all those places. But you've helped me to understand that blame is like a one-way, like pointing the finger outcast that you'll never close that cycle. So I gathered up all those things and did the forgiveness work to close that gap. But it's almost like a practice that we need to do all the time of where are those, because it's robbing us of our ability to focus and truly move on to the next possibility. You close yourself off to what could potentially be next.
That's right. Exactly.
Wow. So that was huge. So when we go outside of ourselves, we're not completing cycles of action. That was huge. Yeah.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
might drop my oh, Kathy.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole
Okay.
point. You know, we live in a world of dualities and paradoxes. You know, right, wrong, good, bad, acceptance, denial.
Mhm.
But it all begins and ends with us and our perceptions, and the quicker, the velocity with which we can close those gaps and collapse those dualities, transcend the dualities, the more present we become to the life that we're living right now. We have more energy, more joy, more love,
Mm,
and more creativity,
mhm.
more powerful.
Mhm.
I like that, the dualities.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of that right now.
Yeah. When
I spent one full day, 7 hours straight, no phones, no computer, nothing. And I wrote out all the different sets, and I came up with probably about 500 in that day.
What do you mean sets of different?
Duality.
Dualities.
Oh, wow, dang, girl.
Yeah, and there were more. There's more.
Wow. Wow.
And that were not duplicates. They were not duplicated.
Mhm.
It's a really powerful exercise.
I'd love to
Yeah.
share a little something about
Yeah.
that, Carol,
Mhm.
because when I shared about the Kybalion in our last session and about intentions and dreams, the Kybalion has these 7 principles of the universe, so basically the 7 principles that govern our existence. And it's such a powerful book because one of those is the principle of duality. By being manifested in form in a body, we cannot escape duality. Our
That's
plane
right.
is dual. At all times, you will see the glass half empty or half full. There's both constantly. The question, the perception here, and the key is, which one are you looking at? That one will grow. That perception, that perspective, that focus will allow you to see more of either the half full or the half empty. But all of our existence, that's why there's hundreds and thousands, and they're infinite, because every single aspect on this plane will have an equal and polar opposite that are part of the circle. They're just 2 extremes of the same thing.
Which
And
is,
the idea, oh, sorry, go ahead, Joanna.
I was just going to say, in my head, what I'm seeing is yin and yang. That's how we learn it in Chinese medicine, is the duality of the body and just keeping it in balance.
Mhm.
And everything is balanced. So
That's
it's understanding, because learning yin and yang is learning the dualities, like matter versus no matter. And like, that's how deep we go with the and I didn't realize that that was the dualities.
Mhm. So here's the thing about dualities. They exist simultaneously.
Yeah.
But in our life, we bounce between one or the other. Aristotle gave us the either or concept. And there is a way to transcend the duality. Because when we know and we live and acknowledge fully the isness of both living simultaneously together, it's not either or, it's they exist simultaneously. We can transcend the duality
That's powerful.
because there's a positive, negative, and neutral, right? It's not about getting to the neutral. It's about transcending that duality to so there's I forgot what I was going to say. Take it away, ladies.
Okay. So the way I see it in the yin and yang, which is a very practical way to bring it together and visually help us understand it, it's a circle. It's a oneness. There are the two sides. There is the duality. And I think this is kind of what you were sharing, Carol, is that in that place when we can transcend the duality is the oneness, is when we realize that it's all one. They're just different aspects of each other. And when we can integrate both and acknowledge that both coexist with us at all times and around us at all times, then we can be in the oneness of what we really are, of who we really are, that everything is connected.
Yes.
That everything is one.
So I see this straight line. You got the positive, the negative, and the neutral in between, right? So this straight line, you got positive, neutral, and negative. But then you get the apex up here, which transcends that line.
And I love the yin and yang symbol because to me, I see it as a circle, as Nom.
Yeah, it's all the
kind
same.
of the visual.
Exactly.
It's the same. They're just different visual ways to represent it, to explain
That's
it.
exactly right.
Right. Yeah.
You're on mute.
Do you have some practical tips, Carol, of different ways we might look for those closed ways, or ones that are still open that we can close?
Yeah. First, we have to recognize that there's a conflict. You know, we often go through life on this automatic pilot where we're just running, and running toward or running away from, and recognize the conflict that we're experiencing within, no matter what it might be. And the moment that we recognize there's something not right within, then we can begin to address what the nature of that issue is. So that's the first part. The next part is, like I was saying before in our conversations, be intentional about being understood and intentional about receiving. I gave this example of talking to being in a group of insurance agents, and I don't know of an industry that has more acronyms. And I couldn't believe how many acronyms were used in one sentence. Now, if there was an intention to not be received, to not hear, not to be understood, it's in that kind of conversation when we're talking in industry jargon, right?
Right.
Words are used to conceal, not reveal.
Ooh.
I love
And
that.
yeah, that was a biggie too. A lot of the things that we don't say are behind, you know, we hide behind what we do say. So the intention to be heard and understood, it's not just so much about being heard, it's about being understood.
Right.
And to present ourselves in a way that we want another to understand, to receive what we're saying. There are actually 12 cycles of a conversation, not just me saying something, you receiving it, and that's the end of it. There are actually 12, and that's something that I'll go into at another time. But again, the intention to be understood and the intention to receive. And don't take on more than we should. You know, Claudia, you were talking about time management. Our whole perception of time can change when we perceive and see life through completing cycles of action. And when we take on more than we can chew, because we don't perceive time well, then we get really conflicted inside. And we have to look at why we're saying yes to so many things. why we have trouble saying no. A lot of people might have trouble saying no to things. So they have to take a look at what is that all about.
Mhm.
So it takes some self-examination and reflection here, right? To understand what's going on so that we can begin to apply this concept and this skill throughout our day and our life. So paying attention to what is going on with regards to not being able to say no. Is it a fear of missing out? Is it a fear of not being included in the next time someone asks, or doesn't ask?
Or
And
just
don't forget
needing
your-
to be accepted by somebody else. You don't want to disappoint somebody and feel like you're
Yeah,
not going to be
right. You don't want to disappoint, but that's a falsehood. That's their responsibility on whether they're disappointed or not, right? Not our responsibility. So we have to also see where we're taking on responsibility where it's not ours to take.
Or even that desire. Sorry, Carol. So
No,
sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to say, and even that desire for me, a lot of times is I want to do it all. I want to get to all of these things,
Mhm.
right? And they're all part of my growth. But as things come up, perhaps I wasn't able to complete things or new things came up. And it's that realization, when do we make a choice to say, okay, stop. I want to complete these things before I move on. For me, they become a bit of a burden. And so what I need to do is I need to do a brain dump. I need to do my lists. I need to see it in a piece of paper so that I can look at it and then choose what are the priorities. And I have to sometimes put some things in the back burner and say, okay, I didn't complete this, but right now it's not the highest priority. That I find challenging because then I feel like I have all these things in the back burner, and that creates a certain amount of anxiety or a certain amount of weight.
That's interesting because you can then, once you got your brain dump out there, if your desire is for the personal growth, you might put a different intention of that, of whatever I choose, I'm going to do it wholeheartedly with all my focus instead of, and I'm talking about me as well. Like I can have 5 books that I'm reading all at once, but do I finish any of them? Like, do you choose? And maybe and I get to the point where I'm okay with knowing that I'm not going to finish a lot of the books that I pick up. But if my priority is to get through a book so that I absorb as much information from that one teaching or teacher or whatever that is, that becomes a priority. So you get to pick what at this moment in time. I like how previously we were talking about, Carol said moment to moment. It's like in this 10 seconds right now, what is the best fit? And maybe the best fit is saying, okay, I've read enough of that book or done that project, and I'm okay leaving that unread. And that's a cycle of action, choosing done, and I'm on to focus on the next. But
That's
I
exactly
love
right.
the focus, the part of this. Thank you.
And I love that also allows the same tip that we were talking about before with the other conversation that's more emotional. It's the acceptance. So
Mhm.
maybe the completing of that cycle is just the acceptance that that's complete for now, even if it felt quote unquote incomplete because we didn't finish the book or because we didn't finish the lesson. And I love that, Kathy. Thank you. Because it brings it back to that possibility that we can accept it as is in that moment and accept it as complete for the process that we need to do for now. And it also brings up the idea for me of, okay, in terms of those priorities, which ones do I need to really complete? And can I start going forward, create the time to implement? So for example, we took a course and we want to do all these things with the course, but we never gave ourselves the time to implement. So that feels unfinished. So going forward from what you're all sharing, I'm thinking, I need to tweak my time management things so that I can start right, creating time to complete those cycles, creating a space and time for myself for the ones that I want to finish and say, okay, now I can move on to the next one.
Which is interesting because it's such an invitation to clean up our own inner dialogue, because when you are judging yourselves for not having completed something, it's like, well, there you did it again kind of thing. And when we get impeccable, it's kind of like being impeccable with your word to yourself. I'm starting this program, I'm starting this book. I'm going to do it and, glean all I need to. Yeah, that's pretty fascinating, Carol.
Yeah,
That's
just
right. Go ahead, Joanna.
No, I was just saying I got that from our last, I think it was the Level Up, or when they were saying you have to schedule the time with yourself. That's what, just like you said, learning these new things. Like for me, learning computers, I have to schedule time to learn computers. Like I got a new computer, schedule classes with Apple. Why didn't I do that? Then I won't be frustrated every time I get on the computer. So that I think is huge, scheduling the time so I can complete the cycle of action. Yeah, that's
That's
huge.
right. You guys were listening in the webinar that I gave with regards to I'm done with this for now.
Wow.
That is probably one of the most powerful statements a person can make when they're working through a project or anything else that's long ended and has many different tasks. Again, the tasks in and of themselves are cycles of action, right? So when I can wholeheartedly put something on aside and feel complete about it and okay with it, that's a completed cycle of action.
Okay. So it doesn't necessarily have to be complete. That's what I'm getting. So when
It's all a state of mind.
right. Today.
Yes.
That's-
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wow.
And that's very
Exactly.
powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that discernment, when we can take a look, and we were talking about, first it needs to be revealed. First, we need to take a look and take a look inside and feel, what are the cycles that are not complete for myself? What are the things? I mean, I have 4 pages of to-do lists kind of thing. And it's like, maybe I get to just say, okay, these stay on the list. These are complete for now. These are on the back burner for someday, if and when, but be okay with that. And these get to be scheduled with time to complete them because they're
Yes.
important to me. And that whole process to me, I like very practical, tangible. That helps me kind of make it practical, tangible.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
You get to decide.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
decide. Right. That's huge.
Isn't it beautiful?
It's powerful. That's what is
Very.
very powerful. Because that's also that self-talk that we keep, you feel that goes back to the judgment. We feel like we're judging ourselves because we're not completing these things. And why do I keep doing this to myself? Why do I take this on? Why do I, like, there's so many thoughts that goes through our head instead of just accepting where we are and just saying, oh, I love myself because I want to do all these things, but today I will just accomplish this or whatever that may be.
Yes. And that also enables us to address anything and everything that's presenting itself in any given moment. We get to decide whether we're going to take care of it now or later. And so, for instance, interruptions go away. There's no such thing as an interruption. It's something that's coming in to either be addressed in the moment or no, I'm not going to do that right now. We always get to decide.
It's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I love how you ladies always remind us, especially of that inner talk, right? When there's inner judgment. Kathy, this is your gift and Zone of Genius. And Joanna, you bring that up as well. And of course, Carol, you show us so much too. So it's that ability to go into it with non-judgment, with love for ourselves. And to say, oh, I just get to notice this. Wow, now that moment of awareness is a gift. and I get to notice that maybe I wasn't being kind for myself, or I'm judging myself for not completing the 4 pages of things or whatever that may be. And to choose to do it differently, to choose to do it from that space of love, to just allow myself to notice moment to moment and have that choice. What do I want to choose?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
To take responsibility for wherever we are in any given moment and know that we have the power of decision and choice. Yes, no, yes, no, in every moment.
And I've definitely, that's the boundaries. Like,
Yes.
boundaries. Like I've learned to create those boundaries. Go, no, I'm not picking that up right now. I don't have the energy for that, or whatever it might be at that moment. Like that has saved me a lot during this process, is being able to just say, oh no, not right now. Like maybe later. Or yeah. Yes, no.
And ultimately, it gives us the bandwidth to become more of ourselves. So do the things that are important to us for our own, like living life on our own terms, picking the things that are important to our own personal journey from wherever we are. Again, I just love this moment to moment. Like today, set the intention for this one very day. How many cycles can we complete today? Get those off the shelf so that you're and it just feels so liberating on the other side of that, Carol, of being able to close those loops and have this greater bandwidth for whatever's next. And we get to see more of that because now our perspective has been lightened, that we can see beyond.
So I just want to kind of, because like you said, getting the things off the shelf. And the other day, I had to give myself grace because I wasn't getting anything off the shelf. I was stuck. I was like, oh, I don't feel like getting out of bed. I don't feel like doing this. And I don't, and I think it was in that moment, I said, give yourself grace. You just want to lay here today. That's completing a cycle of action.
Yes, it is. It is.
Because I had to honor myself at that moment and say all these to-dos that I do have for today, my body is telling me not today. Yes. My mind is telling me not today. And honoring that at that moment, it really gave me great relief. But it was accepting where I was at that moment, and those to-dos, I accepted it. I completed that cycle of action for that day.
Yes.
That's what I did. Yeah. So I understand that now, and it makes me feel good about giving myself that grace, because that's what it is giving yourself permission. Grace. Like, it's so much to just say, no, not today. No.
Yeah.
That's what I need.
Guilt-free.
Unapologetic energy is what I call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
To operate in that. That's my mission.
I needed a day. I call it take a day.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, we need to take a day.
Yeah.
Take a day to honor what we're feeling. We can't always stay in this necessarily positive vibration at all times, at our best, at our peak, there are moments that our body needs rest. There are moments that our mind needs rest to just process. And occasionally we need to honor that we may not be feeling the most positive feelings, in which case I say, take a day, allow all of that to pour through, allow yourself to cry it out or write it out or journal or meditate about it. And then after that release, then you can make that choice again to be present and be, revitalized and with the energy to, okay, I'm going to keep conquering my day to day and the things that I've intended to do. So I think sometimes we need a day. I'm so glad you took a day. I needed a day, and I took a day too.
A friend of mine calls it the 0 day because he's doing nothing, but he's contemplating and kind of like, Marie Kondoing, a little cleanup of the internal files that might feel fragmented or grievances that are still percolating. It's like, no, a
Yes.
0 day, just put it all in order, put it to peace. And yeah,
Mhm.
guilt free.
The velocity with which we can do that in every given moment gives us the freedom and space to be more present in every moment.
Mhm.
There's no regret, there's no guilt, there's no shame,
Blame.
no blame.
Judgment, none of that.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. That's when
That's quite a hefty load to let go of. So, and you've just given us the key. So thank you.
Yes.
very much.
And
Yes.
I just had another thought too. Would that take a day? Why not take a day to complete cycles of action, right? Sometimes maybe that's a phenomenal way to spend a Sunday afternoon. It's what can I complete today? What can I close and or accept or let go of or move on from or say, oh, I finished, yay. Whether it's that book or whether it's that journaling or whether it's a to-do. Occasionally, maybe taking a day would be a really wonderful thing for those things too. To reassess, where am I with all this? Do I still need to hold on to this? Does it still need to be on the to-do list? Can I let this go? Does it still serve me? Just because I wanted to do it 2 weeks
Or
ago.
does it serve me right now?
Exactly. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
Very good.
now. Yeah. Oh yeah, I got a lot out of this today.
I'm glad.
I love this. I do.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Carol.
It's a great conversation.
Yes.
I could go on and on.
Yeah,
I think it continues. Am I going next week?
Yes.
My week. So I think it's kind of continuing because I'm talking about vibing up when you don't feel like it. So your vibe is your visions, intentions, beliefs, and expectations.
Ooh, I like that.
We'll be talking about your vibe and how to vibe up by setting your visions, intentions, beliefs, and expectations. Because when we don't feel like doing none of this stuff, it's it's our vibe that keeps us going. So when we need that 0 day or you have no energy or you're whatever it might be in that moment, it's what we have already laid as our foundation, which is our vibe. And that's what we'll be talking about next week.
Not next week, in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, 2
Well,
weeks.
what's the date on that? Who can do
So
math? It's the
that's
19th
going to
of
be the
February.
19th.
Yeah.
That'll be the 19th. So we'll be vibing up for February 19th.
Super exciting.
Yes.
Very cool.
So, well, thanks for another juicy conversation, ladies. You are awesome.
Yes, so powerful.
It's been
I
great.
just had a thought of a little something that I wanted to share before we go, since we have a couple minutes left. It was in Emmett Fox. I don't know if you've ever heard of Emmett Fox, but he was an amazing theologian, philosopher, metaphysician, and he had a passage called Dinosaur Eggs. And he said, you know, how amazing it was that for the scientists that they had found the dinosaur egg. But he was talking about how it wasn't for the dinosaur. The fact that that egg never came into fruition, the fact that that egg never hatched was actually the detriment or the sadness or the longing of the dinosaur, right? And I get goosebumps when I think of that example because that also reminds me of the importance of completing our cycles of action, whatever ones we choose. And
Yes.
that being able to take those dreams to fruition, those laid eggs, so to speak, so that they can hatch. And I wish that for all of you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Good metaphor.
And we're going to leave it right there.
Yep. Hatch your dinosaurs.
That's beautiful, Claudia.
Love and light, everyone.
All right.
Bye all.
Bye.